I'm going to talk to you tonight about life along the Ohio River. The Ohio River holds a lot of personal history for me. It's the river where I almost drowned when I was 16 years old. And in spite of the fact that that was a scary experience and could have turned out very tragic, the river holds a lot of personal, wonderful memories for me as well. I grew up about 2 blocks from its banks, and I found a lot of joy and comfort in it as I was growing up. When I would go to sleep at night, it was the sounds of the tugboats on the river as they blew their horns to one another that would lull me to sleep and give me a feeling of safety. The river's not always a very safe place, however. In 1937, there was a terrible flood, one of the worst floods that this country's ever known, along that river. And anyone who's ever grown up in that valley has heard their parents and their grandparents tell the stories over and again. As the floodwaters rose, people were placed on boxcars in large amounts, and they were sent north by the railway to more northern cities to escape the treachery of the floods. My family was also placed on those boxcars. My mom and her brother and my grandparents were sent north, and they fortunately had relatives in Indianapolis where they would stay. Not everybody, as my mom said, was so fortunate, but people were very kind, and at every railway stop, people would meet the trains with stacks of blankets and warm food and take strangers into their home where they awaited the procession of the waters. That was about 2 weeks that they had to wait until they were able to return to their homes. When they did return, they found just devastation. The extent of the damage was tremendous. 90% of the homes in Jeffersonville were destroyed. At the highest point, it was under 19.5 feet of water. The waters had inundated not only Jeffersonville, but Louisville and Cincinnati, Ohio, and everything in between. To the end that there was just terrible destruction everywhere. My grandfather had a store, and that store also took a lot of destruction during the flood. It was a 2-story store, and on the second story of the grocery store, there were piles of mud when the floodwaters receded and they went back home, and it took shovels to get the mud out the windows and to restore the store to its former condition. The business district was very near the river, and it took even more of a hit. There was a candy store down there that remains to this day. It was opened in the early 1800s by a man named Gustav Schiff, who came from Germany. That was a main street. Schimp's was opened in the early 1800s and stayed in the family. In fact, the people who own it today are still Schimp's. And after the flood, it was almost completely destroyed. It was restored with everything in it being new, except for the ceiling. It has a very unusual tin ceiling that's like it. It's got a motif in it that's a hammered tin, and it's as old as the store itself, and it remains to this day. They serve all kinds of awesome candies there, and it's a wonderful place to visit. Another thing about the river is that, especially when I was a child, many people had camps along the river. Various things, everything from houses to screened-in porches to trailers. A lot of families just had little plots of land where they would visit and recreate. My family had a camp on a place called Longview Beach, which faced one of the islands of the Ohio, called Baltimore Island. At Longview Beach, we had a little house where my whole extended family would meet every Sunday of the summer, and they would bring their own special favorite dish, and we would recreate there on the river. There were all kinds of things to do. They had huge inner tubes that they got from trucking companies, and sometimes people would bring their boats, and my cousins would water ski. We children had rock skipping contests, and all around it was just a wonderful time. The view you see there is what you would see from the hill where our camp was located. My cousins have now built a house here. Most of the camps are gone, and most of those plots of land have been sold for permanent homes now at a pretty hefty price. But that's the view still to this day, and off in the distance is the 12-mile island. So we're a little ways up the beach from that. Another amazing thing about this river is the opposite. There is a coral reef that goes from Louisville to Indianapolis. The only place that's visible is there in Jeffersonville. It's fossil beds. And it's now, when we were children, we were able to collect fossils there. In 1982, they outlawed that. But you can still go and pick them up and handle them, and they have an interpreter center there now where they show a movie and it tells you all about it. Another wonderful thing that I experienced as a child, and is still the case to this day, is that's the fossils here, what they look like. And now, for the next slide, the Great Steamboat Race and the Belle of Louisville. The Belle of Louisville was a true paddle wheel that was bought by Louisville back in the early 60s. She was in bad shape. She was restored. They even drove on some shallow wrecks of old steamboats to find parts for her. They put her back together and painted her and restored her to her former glory and named her the Belle of Louisville. And on these old steamboats, they had steam calliopes that are very loud and sound just wonderful. We took many trips up the river on that for a nominal amount. We could drive about 3 miles and have a wonderful time. The other thing about the Belle is every year, right before the Kentucky Derby, she faces off in a race with the Delta Queen. That's a picture of the race right there. The Delta Queen is a larger steamboat that's owned by Cincinnati. In the meantime, she's had to be sold. Somehow she was rebought. For a couple of years, she wasn't able to race, but has now for the past few years. And I read in my research for this speech that this may have been the last year that the Delta Queen was able to race, so they had a lot of special festivities this year. She virtually always beats the Belle, but just like the Chicago Cubs, all of the Indiana and Kentucky people line up along the river, and we cheer the Belle on anyway because she's ours. And it's a really fun time. The last thing I want to talk about is Thunder over Louisville. Maybe some of you have watched it on TV or been there. Thunder is the undisputed giant fireworks displays in North America. It's put on by the Vandellis, who are the largest fireworks family left in the world. And they line up 8 barges that are 400 people on the bridge, shoot fireworks off the barges and off the bridge, and it's an amazing, fantastic display. It's something that once you see it, you'll never forget. I encourage anybody who's never seen it to know. They also orchestrate it to music. The music goes along. You hear the music for far distances. It's just amazing. Needless to say, there are many other things I could talk about that are just real points of interest along the Ohio River, as well as personal stories I can tell. But to make the long story short,